Welcome to ResMan Help. In this session we provide an overview of the audit procedures for PPMs in ResMan, and we suggest you view the other PPM help videos for an understanding of the setup and processing procedures and PPM terminology. So I suppose the question we could ask ourselves at this point is why we need to audit our PPMs. There may be many reasons, but I would think that the main reasons would be for providing compliance evidence, for ensuring service quality, and as we often receive support calls from our clients where a PPM which has been set up and scheduled, which has perhaps been regularly occurring, all of a sudden stops working. So whatever the reason, a couple of quick checks will prove that our PPMs are set up and scheduled as required. So the starting point is we go to the work section and we click on PPM, planning and scheduling, and that generates or displays a PPM reference list. So let's look at a possible example where we're expecting a fire door inspection for our client, Mossley CCG, and they've got premises called the Gables, and for whatever reason that PPM which has previously been working has stopped, and we need to say that we would follow the same procedure that we're going to do to audit this glitch if we wanted to audit a sample for compliance or service quality. So the first thing we do is we find the PPM reference, and our list is in alphabetical order, so we go to fire door inspection, and we have some columns here which have active jobs, assets and jobs, and the first thing we notice is that there's no active jobs. So given that it's attached to two assets and that there is one job, that is potentially the reason why our PPM isn't working. So when we create a PPM reference and we then add multiple PPM jobs to it, the system automatically flags those as active. So for whatever reason, someone's potentially unticked our active PPM there. But instead of us just going straight in and changing that, let's look at the other possibilities that we could have to trace the PPM on assets and work. So we've got an option here which is to view assets with this PPM. So given I've got this row highlighted, I can click on this option, and this will show us which assets it's actually been attached to, and we can see that the Gables is one of those. So that's our client, the Gables. So we know that the PPM reference has been attached to that asset. So potentially, again, the fact that it's got a job which is not active will be the reason. Now, if we wanted to see that PPM detail, although we've got all the information that we would want here, that its start date was the 12th of the 8th, which means that if this is an annual job or a quarterly or a half yearly, a higher frequency than a weekly job, it's actually going to be scheduled for the current PPM planning year. And we can even see that we're scheduled for week 20. The only missing thing here is we can't see what day of the week that would be scheduled for. Now I can double click on this asset at the moment and it will take me into the asset detail form, which is non-editable, and I'll do that just to show you. So this is all grayed out, but I could also approach this in a completely different way where I'm looking at the PPM job details. I could go to the asset and I could find that asset, and I know that it's the last one in my list, and I'll double click on the Gables, and here's our PPM, and there's all my PPM information. Now, one of the reasons that I've come into this form to show you the PPM details here is that there are only 2 occurrences in the system that show this PPM ID. Now, the PPM ID is only used by ResMan support staff. It's a unique system generated value which is used to identify the PPM reference. We would typically be auditing PPM jobs, not the PPM reference, although that PPM reference is available if we want to search and filter on it throughout the system. And the other occurrence of it is if I click on attached PPM. So this is, as you'll remember from the PPM help videos, this is a list of all our PPMs that we can select to attach here in the asset, and you can see that the PPM ID is visible there. So we don't use the PPM ID, it's the PPM job ID that we use for audit. So I'm going to go back into the work area and find my PPM again, and it was on the 2nd page, and there's our fire door inspection. So now we've seen that the PPM is actually on our client's asset. The issue must be that there isn't an active job. So I double click on that reference, and it then shows me there's actually only 1 job, and I can double click on that and it will show me that that again is not ticked as active. So I click on that and click on Save PPM Job. Now that simple process of making that PPM job active, because we know it's already attached to 2 assets, those jobs will now be generated and will go into our PPM planning year work list. Just before we leave the PPM, we'll notice here that it's a frequency 48 job, and high frequency jobs don't appear in our low weeks. So that would be an indication when we're looking for when jobs are scheduled. And we can see that this is scheduled for the preferred day of Wednesday. So we can go and look at that in the calendar, but just before we do, one thing I should have mentioned to you is that there's also a very useful report, which is the PPM job detail report. And if you're looking at auditing a PPM, then you might want to view or even print this, because this gives you a complete picture of all of the PPM details. So you can see my PPM job ID is 128. There's the frequency. It shows the preferred day as Wednesday. Here's all our work details. And this is a 2-page report. So if I scroll onto the 2nd page, you can see that the Gables and Mossley CCG is our client, is displayed in here. So that's completing that picture for us. We can see that if I just go back again and show you now that it's got an active job. So if it's active, it's attached to assets, then the jobs will be generated. So now we can go and have a look at that job, and I'll go into the planning calendar, and you'll remember it was for week 20, and it was also scheduled for the Wednesday, and you can see that we've got 1 job in there. I'll double click on Wednesday, and there's our job. And the job PPM job ID was 128. There's one more form that I'll show you. I meant to do Control and C to copy that value then. I did Control and S. Glad you didn't notice that. And I'll go back, and here we've got our PPM job list. And the PPM job list is every single PPM in the PPM planning year. So if I put my copied value in there with Control and V and hit return, there's my 2 PPM jobs, and my asset, the Gables, was 1 all those zeros and 4 1, so that's that PPM job. So that is how we would go about auditing a PPM job, and I'll just give a quick summary at this point. The things to consider when we're auditing is firstly to make sure that our PPM reference at least has 1 active job. Make sure that our PPM is attached to at least 1 asset. Use the PPM detail report to see a full list of all of our PPM details, including active jobs, preferred weekday, and the second page that we can go on to, which is a listing of the assets. Check that the week started is going to give us a highest frequency job in the current planning year. Remember that all of our PPMs apart from weekly jobs will not appear in low weeks. They were 13, 26, 39 and 52. And our frequency 48 jobs will always appear or occur in the same week each year, but frequency 52 jobs will be in different weeks. So that ends the overview of how to audit PPMs in RMM.